He impregnated poor Maid when she was just a young teenager and kicked her out. Her return years later left everyone shocked. He was the powerful heir of a wealthy dynasty. She was just young, poor Maid, scared and voiceless. When he discovered she was pregnant, his response was vicious. He called her a useless burden, dragged her out by the arm, and threw her into the streets with nothing but the clothes on her back. The gates slammed shut behind her as his family erased her like she never existed. Years later, a convoy of luxury cars rolled up to the same mansion. When the doors opened and she stepped out, no one recognized her at first. But when they did, gasps echoed through the crowd, and the man who once destroyed her life turned ghost white. This is the story of cruelty, survival, and a comeback that no one, least of all him, ever saw coming. What do you think happened next? Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please, subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. The rain fell heavy over the city of Boston that morning, washing the stone walls of Westbrook mansion until they gleamed like polished steel. From a distance, the mansion looked untouchable, a fortress of wealth, with trimmed gardens and iron gates that whispered no one crosses without permission. Inside those walls, the servants moved like ghosts. They spoke in low voices, kept their heads down, and never lingered near the family's private quarters. Everyone knew the rules, especially the new girl, Clara Brooks, 17, small-framed with tired eyes that still carried a trace of hope. Clara had arrived only 3 weeks earlier. Her father had passed away after a long illness, and her mother's condition was worsening. She needed money for medicine, and working at Westbrook Mansion was supposed to be her miracle. Everyone in her small town said, "If you can serve the Westbrooks, you'll never starve." But no one told her about the fear that lived inside those walls. "Clara, you missed a spot," snapped Mrs. Gray, the head housekeeper, her sharp voice cutting through the grand hallway. "The chandelier must shine, girl, not sparkle halfway." "Yes, ma'am," Clara replied quickly, reaching up again with the cloth. Her arms ached, but she didn't dare complain. From the top of the staircase, a voice broke the silence, smooth, calm, and lazy. "Mrs. Gray, you'll work the poor girl to death." Clara turned and saw him. Nathan Westbrook, the eldest son of the family. Tall, dressed in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled, a faint smirk playing on his lips. He looked like a man who owned the world, and knew it. "Good morning, sir," Mrs. Gray said, lowering her head. Nathan nodded slightly, his eyes still on Clara. "You're new," he said. "What's your name?" "Clara, sir," she murmured, avoiding his gaze. "Clara," he repeated, as if tasting the name. "Pretty name. Don't let Mrs. Gray scare you too much. She forgets people have hearts." Mrs. Gray forced a nervous laugh. "Mr. Nathan, this one has potential. I'm just teaching her the family standards." "Of course," Nathan said, turning away. But as he walked off, Clara caught his reflection in the glass. He was still looking at her. That was the first day Nathan spoke to her. In the weeks that followed, he found reasons to be around. Sometimes he would stop by the kitchen when she was cleaning, or offer to carry something heavy for her, things no Westbrook would ever do. "You shouldn't be doing this alone," he'd say, smiling as if they shared a secret. Clara would blush and shake her head. "It's my job, sir." "I told you to call me Nathan," he'd insist, his voice softening. "We're not so different, you and I." But they were. He was born into silk and power. She was born into struggle and silence. Still, his kindness felt like sunlight to a flower that had only known shadow. He made her laugh. He made her believe she was seen. When he found out about her mother's illness, he slipped her an envelope. "Don't argue," he said when she tried to refuse. "It's just to help with her medicine." Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you, sir. Nathan. I don't know how to repay you. Maybe just smile more," he teased. "The house feels warmer when you do." The staff noticed their closeness. Whispers spread through the corridors. "She's next," one maid whispered. "Next for what?" another asked. "For the curse," came the reply. "Every girl Nathan fancies disappears." Clara pretended not to hear. She didn't believe in curses. But some nights, when she lay in her small attic room, she heard things. Muffled cries, doors closing in the dark, the sound of footsteps that stopped outside her door, and then vanished. One cold evening, Nathan asked her to meet him in the garden behind the mansion. The moon was high, the roses silver in its light. "I shouldn't be here," Clara whispered, looking around nervously. He smiled and stepped closer. "Relax, no one can see us. But if Mrs. Gray doesn't control me," he interrupted. "Clara, I can't stop thinking about you. You're not like the others here. You're kind. Real." Her heart pounded. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. He touched her hand. "When my father transfers me to London next month, I'll take you with me. I promise I'll take care of you and your mother." The words melted her fear. And for the first time, Clara believed in something good. Believed in him. But promises made in the dark rarely survive the daylight. 2 months later, Clara stood in front of her mirror, trembling. The test in her hand confirmed what she already knew. She was pregnant. When she told Nathan, his face drained of color. "Pregnant?" he repeated, as if it were a foreign word. "Yes," she said softly. "I thought you'd be happy. You said—" "Clara, do you have any idea what this means?" He began pacing. "My father will destroy me. My mother will—" He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "You can't tell anyone. Do you understand?" "I'm not ashamed, Nathan," she said, her voice shaking. "I thought you loved me." He looked at her then, really looked, and she saw fear in his eyes. Not love, not guilt, just fear. "Clara, please," he said, reaching for her hand. "Let me handle this." But he never handled anything. The next morning, 2 guards came to her quarters. "Mrs. Westbrook wants to see you," one of them said. In the parlor, Margaret Westbrook sat in a velvet chair, her fingers gliding over a cup of tea. Her expression was calm, almost polite. "Clara," she began, "you've been with us for a while now, haven't you?" "Yes, Ma'am," Clara said quietly, her hands clasped tight. "You've done good work. My husband and I value loyalty. But lately," Margaret paused, eyes narrowing, "I've heard some disturbing rumors." Clara's heart raced. I don't understand." "Oh, I think you do." Margaret set down her cup. "You've been sneaking around with my son. Don't deny it." The staff talk, Clara's lips parted. "Mom, Nathan loves me," he said. "Love?" Margaret's laugh was sharp. "My dear girl, Nathan doesn't love you. He doesn't even respect you. You were a moment of distraction. A mistake." Tears filled Clara's eyes. "That's not true." "Then let's ask him," Margaret said, her tone icy. "Nathan!" Nathan entered the room, pale and tense. He avoided Clara's eyes. Margaret looked at him. "Tell her what you told me." He hesitated. "Mother." "Now, Nathan." He swallowed hard, then turned to Clara. "You've been stealing from the family," he said quietly. "Jewelry, money. You forged my signature for personal gain." Clara's jaw dropped. "What?" "Nathan, no, you know that's not true." "Take her away," Margaret said to the guards. "Please!" Clara screamed as they grabbed her arms. "Nathan, tell them the truth." But Nathan didn't move. He stared at the floor, his face like stone. "You said you'd take care of me," she cried. "You said—" He turned away, and that was the last time she saw him. The staff gathered by the door as Clara was dragged outside. Some looked away, others whispered. "Did she really steal?" one asked. "No," another said softly. "She just got too close." The rain poured down, soaking her thin dress as the gates opened. The guards shoved her out. She stumbled onto the muddy road, falling to her knees. The iron gates clanged shut behind her. Inside, the mansion lights glowed warm and golden, like the life she'd been thrown out of. Clara pressed a hand to her stomach and whispered, her voice trembling, "You buried me alive, Nathan." But graves don't stay closed forever. Lightning flashed. The rain fell harder. And somewhere inside that mansion, a mother smiled, a son drank in silence, and the walls of Westbrook began keeping one more secret. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing to hitting the subscribe button and turning on your notification bell. Also, let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. The snow fell quietly that night, thick, soft, and endless. Boston streets were cold and empty, except for a young woman sitting at the edge of a dimly lit alley, her hands wrapped around a bundle of cloth that barely kept the baby warm. Clara Brooks hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her coat was torn, her shoes soaked, and her eyes hollow from crying. The baby, Noah, whimpered softly against her chest. She rocked him gently, whispering through cracked lips, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mama's here. Mama's right here." She looked up at the night sky, snowflakes melting against her face. God, please don't let him freeze. Her tears mixed with the snow. A car passed, splashing water on her skirt, but she didn't move. The world had already turned its back on her. She had knocked on doors, begged for work, been turned away each time. A fallen girl, they called her. Not fit to serve decent families. For weeks, she had wandered the city, living on scraps, trying to feed her son. Every night, she saw the same dream, the gates of Westbrook Mansion slamming shut, and Nathan's face disappearing behind them. The baby began to cough weakly. Clara held him tighter, her voice trembling. "Please, Noah, please stay with me." A soft voice came from behind her. "Child, what are you doing out here?" Clara turned and saw an older woman in a long grey coat, holding an umbrella. Her face was kind, lined with age, but gentle. I'm sorry, Mom," Clara stammered. "I'll move. I didn't mean to." "Hush," the woman said, kneeling beside her. "How old is he?" 3 months, Clara whispered. "And where are you staying?" Clara looked down. "Nowhere." The woman sighed, her eyes full of pity. "You'll both die out here." She helped Clara to her feet and guided her to a small car parked nearby. "My name is Helen. Ward," she said. "You'll come with me. We'll talk later." Helen's home was small, but warm. The fire crackled softly as she handed Clara a blanket and a bowl of soup. "Eat, slowly," she said. "You look half-starved." Clara hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" Helen smiled faintly. "Because once, someone helped me when I didn't deserve it." "Maybe it's my turn," Clara lowered her eyes. "Thank you, Mrs. Ward. You can call me Helen." That night, Clara slept for the first time in weeks, her baby safe beside her. When she woke, sunlight streamed through the window. For the first time since she'd been thrown out, she didn't wake up crying. In the days that followed, Helen learned everything about the mansion, the betrayal, and Nathan Westbrook. Helen listened silently, never judging. When Clara finished, she said, "Men like that build their lives on people like you, but that doesn't mean you stay broken." "I don't know where to start," Clara whispered. "I don't have anything." "You have your mind," Helen said, "and you have pain. Pain can build or destroy. Your choice." Those words stayed with Clara. Months passed. Clara worked around Helen's small nursing supply shop, cleaning, stocking shelves, and helping customers. She learned about medical equipment, bookkeeping, and how to talk to people with confidence. Helen taught her to balance ledgers, negotiate prices, and make smart choices. "You're quick," Helen said one evening, as they counted the day's earnings. "You could run this place better than I ever did." Clara smiled faintly. "You're just being kind." "No," Helen said, leaning closer. "You remind me of myself when I was young. But smarter. Don't waste that." And she didn't. 3 years later, Clara had saved enough money to open her own small shop, a medical supply corner store she called Hope Care. She hired 2 employees and worked day and night, learning everything she could about healthcare, business, and management. Her reputation grew. Hospitals began ordering from her directly. She reinvested every dollar, expanding little by little. When Helen passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 years later, Clara cried for days. But Helen left her something, not money, not property, but wisdom and the confidence to rise again. In her will, Helen wrote a single line: "Never forget who you are, but never let who you were define who you become." 10 years after that cold night in the alley, the name Dr. Clara Ward was known across Boston. She had become one of the youngest female CEOs in the city, running Ward Medical Holdings, a major supplier of affordable healthcare technology. Her company helped small clinics in poor communities, the kind of people she once was. She had changed her name legally, Ward, in memory of the woman who saved her life. Few people knew her past. To the world, she was a success story, a woman who came from nothing and built an empire. But behind the calm smile and polished speeches, Clara carried a quiet fire. She never forgot the night she was thrown out, or the face of the man who turned away. Sometimes, when she looked in the mirror, she whispered, "You were right, Nathan. We weren't the same. I had to burn first, to become something stronger." Meanwhile, the Westbrooks were collapsing. News spread like wildfire. Gerald Westbrook, the powerful patriarch, was under investigation for tax fraud and bribery. The family's company, Westbrook Enterprises, was bleeding money. Their once mighty empire was now begging for investors. Nathan's personal life wasn't any better. His marriage to Amelia, the daughter of a wealthy banker, had become a quiet war. "You've gambled away another fortune," she shouted one night. "Do you even care about anything?" Nathan poured himself another drink. "You think you're better than me? You married me for the name, Amelia. Don't pretend otherwise." She threw the glass against the wall. "At least I didn't destroy our family name." Nathan laughed bitterly. "The name was doomed the moment my father started lying." The walls of Westbrook Mansion were still tall, but inside, everything was crumbling. One morning, Clara sat in her office, a glass building overlooking the city skyline. Her assistant, Lydia, entered with a folder. "Dr. Ward, there's a new proposal from Westbrook Enterprises," she said. "They're requesting a meeting. Apparently, they're seeking major investors." Clara froze. "Westbrook?" "Yes," Lydia said. "Their financial situation's bad. They're practically begging for help." Clara reached for the folder. Her hand trembled slightly. She opened it and scanned the first page, the logo, the signatures, the name Nathan Westbrook written at the bottom. For a moment, the past came rushing back. The rain, the gates, his voice saying, "You've been stealing from the family." Lydia frowned. "Should I schedule the meeting, ma'am?" Clara smiled faintly, her tone calm. "Yes. Let's hear what they have to offer." The day of the meeting arrived. Clara wore a black tailored suit, her hair pulled into a sleek bun. Her presence was commanding but effortless, elegance built from scars. When she entered the boardroom, all eyes turned. The room was filled with executives from Westbrook Enterprises, desperate faces trying to hide their fear. At the far end of the table sat Nathan Westbrook. He stood as she entered, smiling politely, his charm as smooth as ever. "Dr. Ward, I've heard so much about you," he said, extending his hand. "It's an honor to finally meet you." Clara hesitated, then reached out and shook his hand. His grip was firm, but his eyes flickered with something: confusion, curiosity. Her voice was steady. "The honor is mine, Mr. Westbrook." As their hands touched, a jolt of recognition seemed to pass through him. His smile faltered for half a second. He stared at her, the way she held herself, the shape of her face, the calm fire in her eyes. "I've seen those eyes before," he thought. "But where?" Clara noticed the flicker of doubt in his expression and allowed the faintest smile to touch her lips. She turned toward the others. "Let's begin," she said smoothly. "We have a lot to discuss." The room fell silent as she opened the presentation. Her voice was calm, confident, every word a blade disguised as silk. Nathan watched her closely, something uneasy stirring in his chest. He couldn't place it, but he felt it deep inside, that strange, haunting familiarity. When the meeting ended, he stood again, still trying to read her face. "Dr. Ward," he said softly, "I hope this is the beginning of something great between our companies." Clara's eyes met his. They were the same eyes that had looked up at him in the rain 12 years ago, filled with pain then, and power now. "Perhaps," she said quietly, holding his gaze. "But you never know what beginnings can cost, Mr. Westbrook." Nathan blinked, caught off guard by her tone. She smiled politely, gathered her files, and walked out, her heels clicking against the marble floor like echoes of ghosts he couldn't remember. The door closed behind her. Nathan stood frozen, the memory tugging at the back of his mind, whispering something he couldn't yet see. But soon he would. The morning sun glowed over the Boston skyline as Dr. Clara Ward stood in front of the tall glass windows of her office. The city looked peaceful, unaware of the quiet storm she was about to unleash. It had been months since her first meeting with Nathan Westbrook. He still didn't know who she was, but she knew every detail about him, his debts, his failing marriage, his lies. That was her power now. Knowledge. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to strike. She just needed to wait and let the right cracks break on their own. Clara spent the following week studying the Westbrook family from a distance. She hired investigators, accountants, and private analysts, all under strict confidentiality. Slowly, the picture became clear. Gerald Westbrook, once the king of Boston's corporate world, was now a ghost in hiding. The corruption charges had eaten away his fortune and reputation. He barely left the mansion. Margaret Westbrook, still elegant but colder than ever, was trying to keep up appearances, throwing luncheons and charity teas, pretending nothing had changed. But even her jewelry had been sold quietly, piece by piece. And Nathan? Nathan was still pretending too. He still walked into meetings with that same smile, the one that used to make her heart flutter. But she saw what others didn't, the fear behind his charm. Late at night, she'd watch him on her screen, a video feed from a hidden contact inside his company. She watched him lose his temper. She watched him drink. She watched him destroy himself one lie at a time. She never smiled watching it. There was no joy in revenge, only necessity. Her assistant, Lydia, knocked on the door one morning. "Dr. Ward, Westbrook Enterprises has accepted your proposal to partner on the hospital charity initiative. They want you to co-host the gala." Clara turned slowly, her voice calm. "The gala? At the mansion?" "Yes," Lydia said. "Apparently Mrs. Westbrook herself requested it." Clara's lips curved into a faint smile. "Perfect." She dismissed Lydia and stared out the window again. The Westbrook mansion, the place where she was humiliated, destroyed, erased. Now they wanted her to stand on its stage as their savior. Later that week, Clara received a personal invitation to tea from Amelia Westbrook, Nathan's wife. The note read, "I would love to meet the woman who's saving my husband's legacy." Clara accepted. They met at a high-end cafe downtown. Amelia arrived wearing a designer coat and oversized sunglasses, her smile polite but strained. "Dr. Ward," she said, extending her hand, "it's such an honor. I've heard so much about you." Clara shook her hand. "The honor is mine, Mrs. Westbrook." "Please," Amelia said, sitting down. "Call me Amelia. We're practically partners now." Clara smiled slightly. "As you wish." They talked for a while, about the charity, the hospital, the media buzz. Amelia was charming, but Clara could sense the cracks beneath her perfect tone. The woman was fragile, exhausted. After their third cup of coffee, Amelia finally sighed. "I suppose you've heard the rumors," she said, her voice low. Clara tilted her head. "About what?" "My husband," Amelia whispered. "He's not the man people think he is." Clara kept her face calm, her voice gentle. "In what way?" Amelia gave a bitter laugh. "He's been cheating. With assistants, models, even clients. I've known for years. He hides money, lies about deals, and pretends everything's fine. I used to love him. Now I just want peace." Clara looked at her. This woman sitting across from her, living in the same illusion she once did. For a brief second, she almost felt pity. Almost. "I'm sorry you're going through that," Clara said softly. "But sometimes, peace comes only after truth." Amelia smiled sadly. "You sound like you've lived it." Clara met her eyes. "You have no idea. The night of the charity gala arrived. A night that would be remembered forever. The Westbrook mansion glittered again, dressed in gold lights and banners that read, 'Together for Tomorrow.' It was a scene out of old times, champagne, laughter, cameras flashing. Reporters called it the Westbrooks' grand return to grace. But beneath the music and chatter, there was tension. The staff whispered as Clara's car pulled up, a sleek black sedan with tinted windows. When the door opened, she stepped out in a long silver gown. Her hair was swept back, her diamond earrings catching the light. Every camera turned toward her. Nathan was the first to greet her. "Dr. Ward," he said warmly, taking her hand. "You look stunning." Clara smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Westbrook. You clean up nicely yourself." He laughed, the charm still easy. "I'm glad you came. This event means a lot to my family." "I'm sure it does," she said, her tone calm. "After everything that's happened, I'd imagine reputation means more than ever." He blinked, caught off guard. "You don't hold back, do you?" "Never did," she replied. "Not anymore." Throughout the evening, she moved through the room gracefully, greeting investors, shaking hands, smiling at cameras. But behind every word, she was pulling strings. Every donation pledge that night went through Ward Medical's foundation. Every deal was signed under her terms. Piece by piece, she was taking back the power they'd once stolen from her. From across the room, Margaret Westbrook watched her closely. Her old eyes narrowed. There was something in the way that woman carried herself. Strong, calm, familiar. During a break between speeches, Margaret cornered her son. "That woman," she said quietly. "There's something about her." Nathan frowned. "What are you talking about?" "She has the same fire in her eyes," Margaret hissed. "The same one as that girl." "What girl?" Margaret stared at him. "The maid. The one you ruined." Nathan chuckled nervously. "Mother, that was years ago." Margaret's tone sharpened. "Evil doesn't die with time, Nathan. It waits." Nathan rolled his eyes. "You're overthinking again." But her words lingered in his mind. Later that night, Nathan found Clara standing alone on the balcony overlooking the garden. The same garden where he'd once made his promises and broken them. The air was cool. The music inside had softened to a distant hum. "You disappeared after the meeting," he said, stepping beside her. "I was beginning to think you didn't like parties." I prefer to watch, she said quietly. You learn more when you're not the one talking. He smiled. You're mysterious, Dr. Ward. I like that. She glanced at him. Do you? Sure, he said, leaning on the railing. You have this calm, confident thing going on. But I can tell there's more to you. Something dark, maybe. Pain, perhaps. Clara turned toward him, her voice like silk. Do you ever think about the people you've buried to stay on top? He frowned, caught off guard. Excuse me? People you've hurt, she continued, her eyes steady. The ones who trusted you. The ones you threw away. Nathan laughed awkwardly. You make it sound like I'm some kind of villain. Maybe not a villain, she said softly, but perhaps a man who never looked back at the graves he dug. He smirked. And if I did? Her gaze hardened. Then you'd see some of them learned how to crawl back. The words hit him like ice water. He stared at her. Something in her tone, her eyes, her face. But before he could speak, she turned and walked back inside. The lights dimmed as the host took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, please welcome our keynote speaker and tonight's co-host, the incredible Dr. Clara Ward. Applause filled the room as Clara stepped forward. The spotlight bathed her in white light. Her calm expression didn't waver, even as her heart pounded beneath the fabric of her dress. She looked over the crowd, the rich, the powerful, the ones who never knew her name 12 years ago. And then her gaze landed on Nathan and Margaret, sitting in the front row. She smiled faintly. Good evening, everyone, she began, her voice smooth. Thank you for being here tonight. This event is about more than charity. It's about redemption, about second chances, and about truth. A murmur passed through the crowd. Margaret shifted uneasily. Clara paused, then continued, her voice firm now. Some of you may know me as Dr. Clara Ward, but that's not the name I was born with. Nathan's smile faltered. Clara took a deep breath. My name is Clara Brooks. You might remember me as your maid. The room fell silent. The camera lights flickered. Glasses froze in mid-air. Somewhere, someone gasped. Nathan's face went white. Margaret's hand clutched her pearls. Every secret they'd buried came rushing back like a wave crashing through the room. And Clara stood there, calm, radiant, unstoppable. 12 years ago they threw her out in the rain. Tonight she stood above them, elegant, unbroken, and in control. The silence after Clara's words was almost painful. The ballroom, once filled with laughter, music, and champagne, now felt frozen in time. Every guest stared at her, unsure if they had heard correctly. My name, Clara repeated, her voice calm and unwavering, is Clara Brooks. 12 years ago, I was a maid in this mansion. I was 17. I trusted this family, and they destroyed me. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Flashbulbs went off as reporters began recording, hungry for scandal. Nathan stood frozen in his chair, colour draining from his face. Margaret clutched her pearls so tightly her knuckles turned white. Clara continued, her eyes locked on them both. I was thrown out into the streets with nothing but the clothes on my back. And the man who promised to protect me called me a liar and a thief. Her voice cracked slightly, but she steadied it. Tonight, I stand here not as that broken girl, but as the woman who rebuilt everything you tried to take from me. The audience murmured, confused, fascinated, horrified. Clara reached into her folder on the podium and held up a small envelope. You said I lied. You said I made everything up. But lies can't hide forever. She opened the envelope and held up a document for all to see. This, she said, is the DNA report confirming what you already know, Nathan. Nathan's head jerked up. Clara. Her voice cut through him like glass. No, don't say my name. You lost the right to speak it years ago. The crowd gasped again as her words echoed through the grand room. This test proves, she continued, her voice steady, that Noah Ward, my son, is yours. The sound that followed was chaos. Reporters shouted, cameras flashed. Amelia, Nathan's wife, stood up, her face pale. "Is this true?" she demanded, turning to Nathan. "Tell me she's lying." Nathan couldn't speak. His lips moved, but no sound came. Amelia's eyes filled with fury and humiliation. She slapped him hard across the face before the entire crowd. Then she turned to Clara, trembling. "I'm sorry for what he did to you," she whispered. "You didn't deserve it." And without another word, Amelia stormed out, leaving the room in shock. Clara looked toward Margaret, who was shaking her head slowly. "You," Margaret whispered, "you ruined my son's life." Clara stared back coldly. "No, Mrs. Westbrook. You ruined your own bloodline the day you taught your son that people were disposable." Margaret opened her mouth to respond, but suddenly her face went pale. Her hand gripped her chest as she gasped for breath. The crowd rushed toward her, but Clara stood still, her expression unreadable. The medics were called. The music had stopped. The Westbrook family's empire, its name, its pride, its illusion, was collapsing in real time. Reporters hounded Nathan as he stumbled out of the ballroom, chased by cameras and flashing lights. "Mr. Westbrook, is it true? Do you have a secret child? Did your mother cover up the scandal?" He pushed through the crowd, his perfect image shattered. And Clara? She simply walked out through the same doors she'd once been thrown through, this time, with her head held high. Outside, the night air was cool and still. She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling slowly. It was over, at least the part that used to haunt her dreams. The next morning, every newspaper in Boston carried the same headline: Westbrook Empire, shattered by hidden scandal. CEO's secret son revealed. Investors began pulling out. The company's stock dropped by 60% in 2 days. Nathan's reputation was gone. So was his marriage, his fortune, his pride. Clara didn't watch the news. She didn't need to. She already knew what truth could do. It burned cleaner than revenge. 2 days later, she received an unexpected visitor at her office. "Send him in," she told Lydia. Nathan walked in, looking nothing like the man she once knew. His eyes were red, his suit wrinkled, his voice unsteady. "Clara," he began, but she didn't look up. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. I had to see you." I had to explain. "There's nothing left to explain," she said. He stepped closer. "I was young, Clara. I was scared. My mother, she told me if I didn't do what she said, my father would disown me." Clara raised her head slowly, her eyes cold and sharp. "You weren't afraid, Nathan. You were proud. You didn't want to be seen with someone beneath you." He swallowed hard. "I know. I ruined everything. I ruined you." "No," she said softly. "You tried to. But you failed." He sank into the chair across from her. "What about our son?" Her expression softened, but only for a moment. "Our son," she repeated, "is mine. You don't get to claim him now that your world's fallen apart." He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. "Please, Clara. I don't want money. I don't want power. I just want to see him." Clara stood. "You'll see him when he decides he wants to see you. Not before." Nathan nodded weakly, his voice breaking. "I deserve that." She looked at him one last time. "You deserve the truth. And now you have it." That's all. He stood to leave, but paused at the door. "Clara, for what it's worth, I'm sorry." She didn't answer. As he walked out, she whispered quietly, "Sorry doesn't rebuild graves, Nathan." Weeks later, the Westbrook mansion was almost empty. Most of the staff had left. The gardens were overgrown. The once golden Westbrook sign above the gate had begun to rust. Clara returned one last time, not for vengeance, but for closure. The new owners, her foundation, were taking over the property. The mansion would become the headquarters of the Ward Foundation, a charity for single and abandoned mothers, a place for women like her to start again. As the workers began replacing the letters on the gate, Clara stood beside her teenage son, Noah. He looked up at her. This was his house. It used to be, she said softly. Now it's ours. In a different way. Noah nodded, staring at the big, empty mansion. You really used to live here? Clara smiled faintly. For a little while. Until they taught me how cruel people can be. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, And you forgave them? She looked at him, her eyes calm. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for us. So we can move forward. He nodded again, understanding more than he realized.